The Finance and Budget Committee of the Washington County Quorum Court is called to order. I have requested that J.P. Wilson do the prayer and pledge this evening.
Please join me in prayer. Our dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for allowing us to live in the best country in the world. And we just pray for your guidance tonight as we conduct the business of this county. We thank you for all the blessings you send our way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Wilson. The agenda has been sent out. There should be a hard copy in your packets this evening. Do I have any changes or amendments to the agenda? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Move to adopt the agenda as written.
Second.
I have a motion to adopt the agenda by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Washington. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Now for our monthly reports. First up, Treasurer Hill.
Hello, everybody. 4.1 Treasurer's Financial Summary. Numbers still look good, nothing out of the ordinary. We did have 3 payrolls this month. Kind of skewed the numbers a little bit, but again, nothing out of the ordinary. I would draw your attention to 1006 ARPA replacement funds. You see the $10 million. We put that in there this month, or in June. And down to 3046, the American Rescue Plan. We did get the other half of our money in, the 23.2 million came in. And again, that 10 million on the expense side is where it went to the ARPA revenue replacement. The bottom of this report brought in 87, or we started the month at 87 million, ended 108 million. Most of that, of course, was the ARPA money. 4.2 obligations and expenditures from the ARPA. This is from this beginning. 17.4 million expenses. That includes the 10 million coming out, but we got 29 million left in the account. 4.3, the property taxes for the general fund. Last year we were above, last month we were above 2021, but this year this month, we're below what we were in 2021, so just kind of a roller coaster. It'll straighten out by the end of the year. 4.4, the 1 cent sales tax. Got in 811,000. That was almost a 3% decrease, but as it was last month, it was hard to compete with 2021 when everybody had their stimulus checks. 4.5, the quarter-cent sales tax for the jail. Almost a 9% increase over 2021. 1.2 million in For the year, that's already $850,000 above this same time last year. 4.6, the local distribution of the sales taxes. Only negative was sporting goods / hobby, musical instrument. Everything else did well. 4.7, half-cent road tax. This brought in almost $190,000, which was 5% over the same period last year. And for the year, they're up $157,000. That's all I have for this report.
Questions for Mr. Treasurer Hill? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item number 5 is the Employees Insurance Report. We have Mr. Angel with us tonight.
Good evening. How is everyone? All right, I will get right to it and go to 5.1, which is your employee insurance spread. I will save you the how we got here on the top and skip directly to the bottom. Good news this month, our income was $591,000 and our expenses were $491,000. So anytime we're $100,000 to the good, I think we've had a pretty darn good month. That got us up to, if you'll see that bottom number, 3.26 million. If you'll recall, we really try to keep that number between 3.4 and 3.5 million. But as happens in most Marches, for some reason, we had a rough March. I think we had about 640,000 in claims this March, so we took a little dip. But the last 2 months, we've been able to put a little money back in there. So it's our expectation that we'll be able to end the year right around that 3.4 million mark. We do expect to have some more or some less favorable contracts coming in next year for Blue Cross. As you guys may all be aware, we have a nursing shortage in America. So we have quite a bit of travel nursing going on. I would never blame a nurse for doing that. The money is much better. Travel nurses are making on average $3,000 to $7,000 a week, depending on where they are. Now, obviously, Arkansas isn't going to be quite as pricey as, say, Southern California on travel nurses, but hospitals are having higher expenditures this year and last year than they were used to having in the past. So at some point, we rent Blue Cross Blue Shield's network. So at some point, those contracts will become more expensive. So I always try to give you guys the numbers for today, but also give you a look at what's coming in the future. And I would say what's coming in the future is probably higher costs for hospitals, which will eventually mean higher costs for us. If we go to 5.2, that gets us to our cash flow. You'll see year-to-date, we are almost exactly where we were year-to-date last year, which consistency is a good thing in this business. The month-to-month will be off a little bit, but we had spent $459,000 at this point last year, and this year we spent $459,000. So we're about as close to even from last year as we can possibly be. Any questions, gentlemen? And lady, sorry.
No question. Thank you, Mr. Angel.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Item number 6, Comptroller's Report. Good evening, Comptroller Worthen.
Six point one is the summary statement of operations, the expenses by fund and department. And we're 6 months into the year. And the summary for general fund is actual spend at 43.3%. And then for the county as a whole, for all funds, we're at 41.9%. Then 6.2 is the unappropriated reserve balance report that shows all the changes in June as a result of ordinances. And so we ended up with net general of $13,600,000. And that's all I had for today.
Questions for Comptroller Worthen? JP Essery.
Thank you very much. I'm just curious why the building and grounds seems to be out of balance just a little bit.
I think they've been having to spend a lot on the different building repairs and so forth, and they responded back to why they were over on the percentages, and I suppose if they're gonna end up short for the year, they would need to come forward and ask for some more budget money, but I can get with Director Gonzalez and see if he can email a better explanation of where they're at on their budget.
If you could, that would help us. Thank you.
Okay, will do.
JP Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Worthing, can you tell us, when you tell us that the county's at 41.9%, can you tell us how much of the under budget we are is attributable to unfilled personnel positions? Do you have any feel for that?
I can research that and get back to you. But yeah, that would be a factor in the budget actually used versus, no, I take it back because since we're doing the salary sweeps, it should equal out on the personnel part. So it may just be a matter of budgets being a little bit on the safety margin side versus so close that they're close to running out of money.
Yeah, thank you. If you'd look at that for us, my real question is, are we under budget because we're not filling positions and paying people, or are we truly running under budget on all the non-personnel items? That's the question I have. Thank you.
Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
Additional questions for Comptroller Worthing? Thank you, sir. Okay, hard to believe it, but this will be the first meeting that we're back into our budget review process, so item number 7, I think we're going to start picking on the treasurer. Treasurer Hill, you ready to go again?
I want to get the most complicated budget out of the way first.
That's right.
All right. Y'all know I don't spend any money. 7.1, this is the general fund part of my budget. It's only personnel. You can tell there's a slight increase, and that was due to the ordinance last month that got my chief deputy closer to her peers. So that's the only difference there. That's, I guess it's 2.6% overall increase. 7.3, my treasurer automation budget. 3 notes there that increased. General supplies went up $1,000 just due to rising cost. Same for advertising and publications and software support. That's for all of us to have some Adobe software that we can edit PDF documents with. That's the reason for that. So overall, that is 1.2%, $1,410 more than last year. That's it in a nutshell. I'll take any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If you'd like a hard copy of these books, I think we'll have to request them from Ms. Myra. but you can do that. Number 8, Judge Beaumont.
My trial court assistant made me what I said was an idiot-proof budget summary, so we'll see how this goes. So the only change in our budget is for a new case manager position, which is being paid. Oh, I'm sorry.
Come a little closer.
I've never heard anyone say they couldn't hear me, so, wow, all right. I think the only change in our budget is that we were awarded a grant that allowed an extra case manager for drug court. And so the extra money from last year to this year requested is being covered by the grant, so there's no additional request for the county. I prefer no questions, but if I have to answer some, I will.
I'm gonna give him like 30 seconds. Then we'll get you off the hook.
This is the only time I have to sit in the witness chair, and I gotta be honest, I don't like it.
Any questions? Anybody still studying? We appreciate you, Judge Beaumont. Thanks for coming and
All right.
spending a little time with us, sitting in the
y'all.
witness stand.
Y'all have a good time.
Ready for Circuit Court Division 7. Judge Taylor, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. All right, my proposed budget for 2023 is pretty much exactly like my 2022 budget. However, I'm now asking for a law clerk, but that's not on this proposed budget because it hasn't been approved yet. Am I correct that that's the way this is done?
Yeah, I believe that's
Okay.
true. Yep.
All right. So, I base my budget every year just on the previous year's expenses, pretty much, and hope that we stay in line with that. So it looks like when I put my budget together, I'm down $300 or something, $400 from last year's budget.
Can I ask you about your law clerk?
Sure, ask me whatever you want to.
How do we study if that's effective? Like, once you get it, how do we measure whether or not, you know what I mean, we have spent our money wisely, do you think? Is there cases resolved, cases closed? I mean, I'm just, of course, throwing out things there.
I really don't know how to answer that question. What I can tell you is that I do not have time to do research. Anytime I have a question about how fast we're moving cases or if there's a different way to keep track of our cases, I'm the one who ends up crunching the numbers and writing things down and putting together spreadsheets. And those are things that I don't really know how to, I mean, I can't do anything except in longhand. I mean, I'm not one who can put together a spreadsheet to manage data.
Sure.
And so I end up spending an inordinate amount of time trying to figure out the answers to my questions. And I'm hoping that a law clerk will be able to fill that role. Is about the best way I know how to say it. I mean, it would be nice to say, yes, if I have a law clerk, we're going to see closure of cases rise by however much percentage. I just don't know. I've never had one.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know what I want the law clerk to do in my office.
for reference for the rest of the committee, there's an ordinance on tonight, item number 15, to approve that. And I don't want to jump ahead, but I thought if we were here, we could answer questions about it now.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm happy to answer the questions and as.
The other big question I had about it was the total appropriation there that we're waiting on is $82,000.
Right.
Is that for a whole year or half of a year?
A whole year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
That's for a
assumed, but I just
A
wanted to.
full-time law clerk for, well, that would be a full year. Yes, that would be a full year expense.
Right. Salary of 62,100 and then of
And-
course all the benefits and taxes and things like that.
Related expenses, yes.
I was just wondering why we had an ordinance. The ordinance tonight would be for the remainder of 2022 and
Correct.
we're appropriating money for a whole year.
Yeah, I don't know. That's how I was told.
That's
to
how
do
you were
it.
told to do it.
Yeah, I
That's
don't-
okay.
this is not my bailiwick at
Sure.
all. So, I honestly hadn't even thought about that. But yes, that is a full year's salary
Mm-hmm.
plus related expenses. So that is really the amount that would go in my 2023 budget.
Right. So we could use that in the mental reference of where we're at here. Okay.
Yeah, that much for the ordinance for tonight, though, would be to finish out 2022 if we were able to hire somebody, is my understanding.
Sure.
If we were able to hire somebody for the balance of 2022. And obviously, it wouldn't be that full amount that would actually be spent.
Questions? J.P. Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm curious what the comparison with other judges is. I mean, do we know if each of them has a law clerk, or if this is the only one that doesn't, or do we know those facts?
I can tell you this, this job description, salary, the whole thing is exactly like Judge Lindsay's law clerk that he added, or y'all gave him, I guess, 2 years ago, maybe. I think he's had a clerk for about 2 years.
I think he got it in the budget process last year.
Oh, okay. And I do know that Judge Beaumont has some clerks. They're not necessarily law clerks, but she has some clerks that are paid for by various grants. And, but this clerk would be a licensed attorney in the state of Arkansas, because I really need somebody who has a working knowledge of the courts and how the criminal process works, and also the order of protection domestic relations docket works, and how to read pleadings and evaluate files.
Okay, so are there other judges that do not have this kind of support then? Is Judge Lindsay the only other comparable office?
I would say so. I would also not say that I'm an expert in it. I think the way I've viewed it is the judges' courts are all so different, it seems to me, that
I see.
I think the main comparable would be Judge Lindsay's court. And I would say we're in new territory there because he's had a law clerk for 6 months now.
I think for me, it seems like if we have an annual budget process, that we should be looking at this in terms of the first of the year and whether to approve it for the first of the year as opposed to a mid-year. That's just my observation.
J.P. Simons?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Judge Taylor. So I'm assuming since we haven't approved this, you haven't started the process of, looking for somebody.
Exactly.
It's hard to find good
It's hard
help.
to offer a job to
Sure.
someone when you don't have one to offer.
Sure, it is hard to find good help right now. What's your expected time frame? How quickly do you think you could get this position filled, assuming the funding was there?
Well, I don't know. I've never looked for a law clerk. I've never tried to hire one, but I don't think it's going to be a difficult position to fill,
Okay.
is my anticipation, but perhaps it will be. I mean, I don't know. We'll just have to see.
Is the compensation structure gone through, what's the? No, JSAP.
Yes.
So that's
Yesterday.
been vetted and it's market comparable.
I appeared before JSAP and also Personnel Committee yesterday.
Gotcha.
And it passed through both of those committees.
Great.
So I'm here tonight for the ordinance that was approved by Personnel last night. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
JP Duncan.
Could Judge Lindsay's law clerk be a shared resource between the two courts?
I think he's pretty busy. I mean, that is not something that I have explored. Judge Lindsay has 75% of the criminal docket, and I think I can't speak for him, but I know that that's pretty much the only area that Mr. Morton works in. As I said, in my division, I have 25% of the criminal cases, and then I have also over 50% of the domestic violence cases. And I have all of the domestic violence cases that involve children and families with children, and all the related cases to those order of protection cases. And that's a change in the way we distribute the cases that went into effect in January of this year. And monitoring those cases and following those cases to make sure that, to try to develop some criteria for seeing if this system works is something that the law clerk would really help me with, and would help all the judges, in fact, all of us, to evaluate whether the new system that we have for domestic violence cases is effective.
So it sounds like your workload changed starting in January, is that right?
It did.
Pretty significantly?
Well, it changed. It's a different kind of workload. I'm not handling, I handle more order of protection cases because I wasn't handling any order of protection cases, but I'm handling fewer other domestic relations cases because they don't involve domestic violence.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to explain the change in my workload. But the biggest thing that we're dealing with right now on the criminal side is that we didn't have any jury trials for over a year because there was a moratorium on jury trials. And trying to figure out who is in jail, who is out of jail, who has pending cases, and really work those cases has gotten even harder because there are so many more cases that we were not able to close. There was a time when I was able to track and see that we were closing more cases than were being opened, even though we still had a backlog of cases, and I can't tell you any numbers because the reports are not reliable. So we're gonna have to come up with a system for tracking those cases that I'm hoping it would be something that even Judge Lindsay's court could use, or anybody who handles criminal cases. But I don't know because it doesn't exist yet.
Sure.
And that is what I'm really hoping that a law clerk can help me with, is to evaluate whether we are effective in handling these cases and how quickly we're able to handle them. I would love to have a rocket docket and get cases in and get them out, but it's nearly impossible to track that with the software that we have right now.
Okay. Thank you for the context.
I don't know if I'm answering any of your questions to your satisfaction, but this is the reason that I've asked for a law clerk.
No, it's helpful.
I usually try to have a judicial extern, which is someone from the law school, a student from the law school who spends about 15 hours a week for free, of course. But the main goal of that program is not to have them crunching numbers and not to have them actually working on cases, but to be familiar, to learn to develop some familiarity with the judicial system and how a judge's office works, but they're not employees. So they're students, and I feel like I've been more of a supervisory, instructional role than they're being my clerks. They are not law clerks. They're externs. But I don't plan on having one in the fall for a variety of reasons, but.
Any additional questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Prosecutor Durrett.
Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Attached to our budget request is a letter from me kind of outlining the additions that we're asking for to our budget, kind of outlining everything, laying that out. Most of this is just based on rising costs and our contract, where we had to re-up our contracts, like with our copiers, our case management system. The biggest jump is probably, I think, in the line item for software support maintenance, and that's because our contract with our case management system had expired, and we had to re-up it. And from when we first got it 5 years ago until now, we've increased about 20 users for our system. And so our system is based on a per user fee. So that's the reason for the increase in the request on that line item. Others are mainly rising costs, like with office supplies. We're finding that the biggest increase we're seeing is in the cost of paper. That's jumped up about $5 per case, and we go through quite a bit of paper in our office with discovery requests and whatnot and things like that. So the increases that we're requesting for each line item are, like I said, it's either because of rising cost or increase or renewal of contracts or leases, such as the storage we have. It's kind of laid out, the rent, land, and building line item 3070, showing we're paying $340 a month for storage of our files, and so that comes up to roughly $4,200, which is what we had requested. And so the amounts that we've requested are essentially the amounts that we're projecting to spend. So if anyone's got any specific questions about anything, I'd be happy to try to answer them at least.
Yes, a very detailed letter. I appreciate it. Gives us some insight. J.P. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The budget I'm looking at shows line item 1001 of $0.
Yeah, that was when we sent that out, or when we submitted our request. That is based on previous years when we were told in the budget process not to fill out the personnel section. So we were supposed to leave that as it was, and it was going to be filled in by comptroller, whoever would fill that in. So that's why that was left out. Apparently that's being corrected as we speak. So that will be, I think that, as I understand it, our request should be about, it'll be about the same. I think it'll be $600 lower than last year due to one person having left, and so that employee's replacement came in, is being paid a little bit lower because they came in at the entry-level salary. And so the person that left was making about $600 more a year.
Yeah, it's a communication error that I'm working on because it gives us no comparability
Sure.
if we don't see it. So not prosecutor direct's error. It's an error in the process that I'm working to correct. So, any more questions for prosecutor direct? JP Rail Stafford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yesterday, we talked about the big, backlog in cases. And that's one of the factors behind, one of many factors behind overcrowding at the jail. Have you considered a more, ambitious budget to help with this backlog? Would that help?
Well, I think that I'd have to run the numbers, but off the top of my head, I believe that, and I can go back and check and get you the numbers. I think that we are making progress because what I have not done is run comparable numbers from where we are this year versus where we were last year. The problem with that is where we were last year is just coming out of the courts opening back up. So I'm not sure from my standpoint. I've got people who are working on the backlog. We've gotten some part-time positions from the state that are temporary, that are designed just to pinpoint or just to focus on resolving those COVID backlog cases. So when and
the states funded those kind
the
of
state has funded
specifically to
those
help
positions.
with the backlog?
Yes, to help with the backlog. So that's why I haven't come here asking for more money, because the state has provided us with an avenue for making that request.
Okay.
And so that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And we're trying to keep track of all cases that were filed, between in the 12, 13, or I guess, 14 to 15 months when the courts were closed. We're focusing on those cases.
Okay. Yeah, because, we're going to consider this later, this big, jail expansion. We know that the overcrowding of the jail, nobody disputes that the jail is overcrowded. But a lot of, the reason why is kind of upstream from the jail.
Sure,
right?
absolutely. It's the jail. I don't want to say it's the chicken or the egg, but I mean it's kind of the situation of what's causing. There are a number of factors, but a big factor is overcrowding at the jail, and overcrowding the jail can cause slowdowns in the system, and the system can cause overcrowding at the jail. It's an issue we're trying to tackle and trying to figure out what the root cause is. A lot of it does deal with a backlog in the system, because you have X number of trial dates per year. You've got a couple of trial dates per month, because the judges have different things that they're having to do, and they try to set a week out for each trial. So finding trial dates is a little bit more difficult, but having those set trial dates does help speed up the system some. So
Yeah, and I know it's not just you. Obviously, it's
Sure.
it's the
Right.
the resources for the judges. It's resources for the public defender's office. It's resources for your office. All of it combined.
Right, and I think from a standpoint of funding, if I could pinpoint something, if I could come in and ask for a specific amount of money for a specific thing that I think could help, I would do that. But
Okay.
I think that funding is not an issue. I think it's just there are X number of hours in the day and X number of weeks, and there are 24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week, and I'd love to be able to add a certain amount of time to each one to be able to do things. But right now, I don't think that.
Is it possible that we might need another criminal court judge at some point soon?
I'd kind of leave that up to the judges to see what they think. I know that at least with Judge Lindsey, he's been willing to look at different things, having court in the afternoons, and we've been looking at a number of things. I mean, we've been doing some things like this, the warrant clinic, and that's helping some.
Yeah.
So I don't think that there's nothing that I can pinpoint that I could come in here and ask for money for that I think is going to help any more than what the state has done with these temporary positions. And so we're just got to work at it.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to,
Okay, yeah, I appreciate
yeah.
that.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank
Good.
you.
With that, we'll move on to the business portion of our agenda. We'll move on to item 11.1, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue of $60,000 in the Juvenile Court Grant Fund and appropriating $60,000 from the Juvenile Court budget for 2022. This is a grant that the Juvenile Court received to purchase a new vehicle for transports. Do I have any motions on this ordinance? J.P. Duncan.
I move we pass item number 11 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Item to pass, item number 11 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, a second by J.P. Ussery. Discussion or questions? Public comments? All right, we have item 11.1 with the motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Ussery. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 11.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item 12.1, an ordinance recognizing and appropriating revenue in the amount of $101,109.24 in the road department budget for 2022. This is a grant that we received from FEMA to repair some damage from the excess flooding of 2019. So 3 years behind. But questions or motions on with regard to this ordinance? J.P. Duncan.
Move item 12 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass item 12 to the full quorum court with due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 12.1 to the full quorum court by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 12.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 13.1, an ordinance anticipating additional revenue of $399,996 in the Drug Court Fund, Grant Fund, and appropriating the amount of $399,996 from the Drug Court Grant Fund to the SAMHSA 2022-2023 grant budget for 2022. That's a mouthful. Another grant we've received with regard to with drug court to provide mental health services. Any questions or motions with this ordinance? J.P. Duncan.
Move we pass item number 13 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass by J.P. Duncan. Second by J.P. Wilson. Any discussion? Further discussion? Public comments? All right, we have a motion to pass item 13.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Wilson. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 13.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item 14.1, an ordinance recognizing additional revenue in the amount of $10,000 in the AOC Juvenile Court Grant Fund and appropriating $10,000 from the AOC Juvenile Grant Court Fund 3519 to various line items in the AOC Juvenile Grant Court budget for 2022. Another grant for juvenile court. J.P. Duncan.
Move we pass item number 14 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass to the full quorum court by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion? Any public comments? Motion to pass item 14.1, the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Duncan, second by J.P. Simons. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Item 14.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item 15.1, an ordinance creating the law clerk position in the Circuit Court 7 budget for 2022 and appropriating $82,147.80 to the Circuit Court 7 budget for 2022. This was the item that I was referencing when we had Judge Taylor up here discussing the budget. This is to add the law clerk. Questions or discussion? J.P. Duncan.
I would move that we amend this ordinance to the dollar amount, to strike out the $82,147.80. Change it to $34,228.25. The reason being, by the time this role will be hired, that would provide 5 months, which would be August through December, to fund this position. And that would just be taking the average of each month and dividing by, or the total $82,147.80 divided by 12, multiplying times 5 to allow for the rest of the year.
Second.
I have a motion by J.P. Duncan to revise totals to account for 5 months remaining in the 2022 budget cycle. And I have a second by J.P. Essery. Any further discussion on that? J.P. Simons.
Point of clarification, so this particular discussion needs to be about the amendment, not about the ordinance in general.
Correct.
Okay.
J.P. Washington.
Thank you. So I just want clarification. So you said you took the total amount and divided it by 12? That's how you arrived at that number?
Let me double check on that.
Okay.
J.P. Duncan.
Yeah, so it's simply taking the $82,000, which is the full amount, dividing that by 12, and then multiplying it by the 5 months remaining in the year. If we were to do it by 4 months, so assuming someone were hired and brought on in September, it would be $27,382.60. That's probably more realistic from a hiring time frame, but I think we appropriate to the full $34,000. That would allow, if someone were to be hired quickly, they could start as soon as August 1st.
Okay. So, I asked that question because would it make a difference if there is like a month that has more than 2 pay periods in it, or if you're just going monthly?
That may be a better question for our comptroller or somebody else who's better with numbers in the room, but if we wanted to be safe, I could change the amendment to $40,000, so it would be, allow for.
It's a salary, so it's not, it wouldn't be full. The salary's even every month.
So I could change it, we could change it to 40,000 to feel adequate that we could cover the full remaining 5 months of the year,
That was just the
starting in August.
concern that it was enough
Okay.
to cover that.
So I'll make the amendment to $40,000 to cover the remainder of the year.
You okay? Any more questions on the amendment? Questions or discussion on the amendment? Okay, we'll take up the amendment. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? So we will amend those values in this budget, or this ordinance. And now we'll take up the main ordinance. J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to reiterate what was brought up earlier in the discussion of vetting out, looking at whether or not sharing with Judge Lindsay's court is an option. I think that warrants at least a conversation and vetting out the possibility of that. Also, it was mentioned what kind of metrics for success would we need to vet this position moving forward. I think that needs some consideration on if we hire this position, what what is our caseload? What is our average time on the case? And are we making progress on that? Is this case, or is this position effective?
JP Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. When I first saw the ordinance, it caused me to pause, and I thought, like J.P. Wilson did, why are we not going through the normal budget process? We spend 5 or 6 months every year doing this, and then all year long, we do things outside the process. And when Judge Lindsay requested a clerk, it went through the normal budget process, and that's how it got passed. So I'm going to continue to question all the things we do outside the normal process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Further discussion? JP Wilson?
I move that this take effect in January at the levels that were identified instead of being done in the middle of the year.
Judge Taylor, would you like to respond to any of this, or why this needs to come now and not in the regular budget process? I want to give you an opportunity to have input if you'd like. Please come to the microphone. Hit the little man, would you? There should be a little button on there. Hit the little man.
My intention was to go through the regular budget process and request this position for 2023. And that was my plan. But then after talking to a number of people, I was instructed that it was possible to go ahead and put this in place. And I decided to go ahead and see if we could get it in place, and that way I would already have somebody working, and we could at least start 23 running instead of waiting until January of 23 and then trying to come up with these processes to get the information that you need to justify the position. So I don't know what you will. I don't have anything else to present for January that I don't have today, is all I can say about it. This position has actually been needed for months before now, but if January is when you think it needs to happen, then I'm grateful whenever I can get the assistance in my office. That's all I can say.
I mean, I guess in the absence of that, you would just include it with your budget, with a, justification letter, which is what you've basically given us verbally. But I'm just reiterating that process to the committee. JP Essery?
Thank you very much. I think that what she's trying to say is she's extremely overloaded now. And she has been, and she's been a little shy to come forward and ask for it earlier. And we're doing our best, and we're having all these discussions, trying to get people through as quickly as possible. We were just asked if there's anything that another division could do to get people through faster. I think this is something that's going to help the people get through the system faster and help work down the backlog of the COVID cases we're trying to get through. Am I correct in that?
You said it better than I said it. Thank you.
Do you guys have some comments or questions? JP Rio Stafford?
Well, I think JP Ussery kind of took the words out of my mouth. I was basically going to say, the exact same thing. We're just talking about that. We're talking about, getting through this backlog of cases. And I think right now the bottleneck is, with our, our courts, and I think we need to give whatever resources that we can to the courts. I trust our judges to know what they need. And, I think that we need to trust them to know that, that that the asks that they're making are needed and appropriate. And so, I think that we should put whatever resources toward the courts that we can to try and get through this backlog of cases.
Thank you. JP Pond?
Yes, thank you. The way I'm along with Rio Stafford and Usry, JP's Rio Stafford and JP Usry. The thing about it is, if we're going to handle everything at budget time in the budget process, then why do we even need to come up here the rest of the year? If we have things through the year that need to be done, we're not supposed to be some kind of a computer or a machine. We're human beings, and we're looking at serving the human beings, the citizens of this county, and looking to their needs. And we're doing our duty to preserve the peace of Washington County. I think that may be why they call us justice of the peace. And if we're not going to do that, there's about 6 months out of the year some of us don't need to be here if we're not going to do our job. I hate to be that way about it, but I think sometimes our full-time elected officials might be ignored and not treated respectfully. Thank you.
I need motions with regard to this ordinance. Come to the microphone. Judge Wood.
When Judge Taylor, I'm sorry, Judge. When Judge Taylor made the request to you guys asking for the additional person, I immediately reached out to her to say, this is for the coming year, 2023. And she said, yes. And I wanted to make sure she was not trying to get someone now. She said, well, if I could, I said, well, we normally have a process that if we're adding people, we stop adding because the budget process has started. But the budget process was just underway, and now we're here. So anyway, she very well could have just left that alone, but because I opened that up to say that if you're looking for it now, and we have not shut down changing budgets at this point in time, which is one of the things we talked about last year. After May, June, July, no more personnel requests will be taken around the county so we can move to the budget process without the constant changes of budgets. That was not the case, and so she went ahead and put that request in. So again, if there's some confusion about going outside the process, it's really because I did reach out to her immediately when she made the request to see if she was just waiting to January or was she trying to look at it. And she said, if it can happen now, because the budget process hadn't started just yet, then I will. And so she went through the regular process of going to JSAP, going to personnel. So I just want to make sure you guys know it was not that anything that she was trying to do and short circuit the process.
Thank you. JP Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me? Okay. I would really like to urge every one of you to pass this onto the full quorum court and allow us to vote on this. And I would like the full quorum court to pass this. One thing that some people need to understand, we are not in her office. We are not in her courtroom. We do not understand the dynamics of her office and the needs and the stress of the office. She would not be here if she didn't feel the need. I know they say, you really want to know what I go through every day? Here are my high heels. Wear them for an hour and then tell me no. She's going through this and it is our constitutional duty to fund county services. She deals with domestic violence and children involved in domestic violence, and we're saying no. I really urge you and encourage you to pass this to the full quorum court and then to pass this for the year. People's lives are at stake. People are waiting to be heard, for justice to be served. And that's what Judge Taylor does. It passed personnel without a dispute because we saw the need. And I hope you all see the need also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. J.P. Simons.
Thank you, Chair. So I'd like to wrap this up. I know we've got some more things to do tonight. I'd like to make a motion that we pass this amended ordinance on to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation of funding this position through the rest of 2022, the 5 remaining months at the $40,000. And I would ask Judge Taylor that when you come before the budget process and request your 2023 budget, that you bring some information with us regarding the conversation of, can a position be funded shared with Judge Lindsay's, or is there too much of a workload for that to be one position, which is likely the case? And maybe with some ideas of how we can have some metrics to judge the efficacy of this new position.
All right, I have a motion to pass as amended to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Simons, second by J.P. Duncan. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments?
Beth Koger, I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I just want to bring up something that was mentioned about the judges sharing a law clerk. I just don't think that's going to work. I worked with lawyers and judges for 43 years. The relationship that a judge has with their law clerk is kind of special because they hear the cases together, the law clerk does research, and I don't know how you put metrics on research, but what it does is it frees the judge's time to deal with other cases and other matters. And also with reference to not passing this into next year, I came to the quorum court full meeting last month and I spoke against adding positions during the year. But I want to remind the court that you did go ahead and fund Sheriff Helder, a legal advisor, at somewhere around $82,000 a year. You funded buildings and grounds for the rest of the year for $6,000 something, and you funded the sheriff's office personnel, detention personnel, and the figure that was bounced around was $600,000. So you have funded positions during the year. And also, as I can't speak for Judge Lindsay, but I know Judge Lindsay's workload. I work closely with Judge Lindsay. I talk to him often. And his caseload is such, in hearing 75% of the criminal cases in Washington County, but he hears 100% of the criminal cases from Madison County. He needs a full-time law clerk. He's not going to be able to share his law clerk. And thank you.
Thank you. Public comments? Okay, we'll take up the question. We have a motion to pass item 15.1 as amended by J.P. Simons to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation, a second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That will pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 16.1. This is an ordinance that came to us with amendments last night from the Personnel Committee. This came to us last night from amendments with the Personnel Committee. The amended copy was in your packet, and so there's a lot of, there's a red line copy in there with new numbers, and so I just want everybody to be aware of that. An ordinance appropriating $3,972.84 from the unappropriated reserves of the general fund to various line items in the tax collector budget and $18,445.50 from the unappropriated reserves of the collector's automation fund for 2022. I didn't have a question. You guys were just
Okay,
kind of interrupting us.
no, that's fine. The 15,000 was what was added. $15,000 was added from the collector's automated fund, so that will not come out of county general.
Any questions or motions? JP Esri?
I move this be passed on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass the full quorum court by JP Esri. JP Simons.
Point of order, I believe we've skipped to item number 17, skipping over item number 16.
Oh, man.
I don't know if that's going to throw us off or if we can go ahead and finish on 17.
Well, I'd
come
like to
back
go ahead and
16.
finish on
Sure.
17 if we could, and we'll back up one. My apologies, that's my fault. And we have a second by JP Simons? Okay, a motion by JP Esri and a second by JP Simons. Any other further discussion? Any public comments? Taking up item number 17, we have a motion to pass the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Esri, a second by JP Simons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 17 will move to full quorum court. Apologies about that. Item 16.1, an ordinance deappropriating surplus amounts from full-time salaries for various departments and restoring unappropriated reserves as required by the 2022 budget controls for the second quarter of 2022. This is our quarterly ordinance where it sweeps unused personnel funds back to the unappropriated reserves of the general fund. Any discussions or motions? JP Duncan.
I move we pass item number 16 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Motion to pass item number 16 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Second by JP Simons. Any questions or discussions? Any public comments? We have a motion to pass item 16.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Duncan, a second by JP Simons. All those in favor? All those opposed? Item 16.1 will move to the full quorum court. 18, right? Okay. An ordinance recognizing and anticipating additional revenue in the amount of $163,758.58 and appropriating $163,758.58 from the unappropriated reserves in the general fund to the various line items in the sheriff and jail budgets for 2021. This needs some amended corrections. I believe you have a red line copy in your packet. They're just calculation and account corrections. So you'll notice the amount on line 35 needs to be amended to $163,758.58. We need to add a line item number 46, workers' compensation account 1000400.1010 in the amount of $3,071.94. And amounts on line 51 and 52, Social Security matching needs to be updated to $2,922.23. And item number line item number 52, non-contributory retirement, $5,852.04. This is to reimburse the Sheriff's Department for security they provide at special events. So I hope that all made sense, and I hope your red line items, your red line copies make sense. But discussion or motions? JP Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move we pass it on to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
Got a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by JP Johnson, second by JP Duncan. Any further discussion or questions? Any public comments? I have a motion to pass as amended, item number Well, I think I've messed up. I think I need a motion to amend with all those corrections that I had just went over, and to do that properly, and then we'll take up the motion as amended, if the ordinance as amended. J.P. Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we amend the ordinance as shown in the document there.
I have motion to amend as shown by J.P. Johnson. Second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? And now,
I move that we pass the amended motion onto the quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
thank you, J.P. Johnson. I have a motion to pass the ordinance as amended, the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Thank you for your patience there. Any more discussion or questions? J.P. Utsry.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to point out that tonight, if you've been following through this, that there's grant after grant after grant, and all these things going back into the general fund. And I'm sure that if you add it all up, we're coming out way ahead. Doesn't happen very often, but we really appreciate the grants, and they really help all the people of the county, and we appreciate the hard work that goes into them. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Utsry. Additional discussion? Public comment? Okay, I have a motion to pass item number 18 as amended to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson, second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item number 18.1 will move to the full quorum court. Item number 19. An ordinance approving the transfer of certain real property of Washington County to the city of Fayetteville for fire protection services. Motions or discussions? J.P. Utsry.
I move that we pass this, move it on to pass recommendation.
I had a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Utsry. Second by J.P. Simons. Any further discussion or questions? J.P. Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is, are we giving away county assets? Is that what we're doing?
Judge Wood, would you like to respond to some of this?
So we are looking at the property that sits the veterans' property over there on North and what's that, Woolsey, that whole area is all county property. We lease a lot of that over to UAMS. We have been working with UAMS over the years to get some of that, and our Veteran Service Office sits there. They gave that property back to us because they weren't utilizing it. And the Fayetteville Fire Department has been trying to find a location to better serve the citizens in Fayetteville with fire services, and has asked, can they look at that piece of property that's right there on the corner? Again, it's a huge parking lot over there where our Veteran Service Office sits. And so we're saying, yes, you can use that particular piece to build a fire station there to better serve the folks there. They've already passed their monies, I guess it's a couple of years ago as they're building their police stations, and they're also expanding their fire stations, and they will allow the county to use some of the facilities for some of their emergency services as well. So it's going to be a shared project. We get a chance to share in some of that, and it benefits obviously the county, let alone the citizens in Fayetteville, to have a fire station right there in that corridor with the growth that we have. So as they're looking at strategically having their fire departments across the city, this is one area that has been lacking, and so it's shortened the time to address an emergency by having a fire station in that particular location. Any questions? And as opposed to charging, and we did that, you guys passed that when we were looking at the cancer house that was across the street from that same facility, as opposed to selling it. We were doing a transfer, it allowed them to go ahead and use that and build a larger cancer house because of, again, the growth in the area and the needs to have something like that to support those families that are working through family members having cancer, so. Any other
Any other
questions?
questions or discussion? Okay.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Judge Wood. Any public comments? I have a motion to pass item 9.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Ussery and a second by J.P. Simons. All those in favor? Those opposed? Item 19.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Item number 20, an ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the questions of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of costs of capital improvements, levying a new 1/4% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining to. J.P. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We discussed this ordinance at length last night at the Jail Law and Courts Committee. We moved to move it to this committee with a due pass recommendation. I move we send it to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation.
I have a motion to pass to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson, second by J.P. Ussery. Any other questions or discussion? J.P. Washington?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I know we've been talking about this for years. And do we need to improve the jail facilities? Absolutely. With the growth in this community, more people equals more crime, may equal more arrests, may equal more people in jail. So eventually, yes, we will need to, we may need to address that. But what I keep going back to is this still does not solve an immediate problem. And so we say that the reason that we want to build the jail is because I think last night they said there were 125 inmates on the floor. So even if we pass this and the jail isn't built for 3 additional years, we still have inmates on the floor. So it's concerning to me that we're being very laser focused on building the jail, but we're skipping over the reason that we need the jail, which is the overcrowding, and we're skipping over that there may be things that we can do that we have not fully and adequately explored that may work to reduce the jail census. I know that we want a solution to this. I know that we want to build a bigger jail, but if our concern is that we have inmates that are sleeping on the floor, then what happens when we build a bigger jail and then there are inmates sleeping on the floor? Eventually, you're going to get to the point where you can't build a bigger jail and you're still going to have to deal with that issue. So I would encourage us to slow the process down and to actually explore some of the items that were a result of the study that we commissioned, and just not be so quick to say that building a new jail or building a larger jail is the only solution, and it's especially not an immediate solution. And I have some questions that some of the constituents emailed that I would like to ask on their behalf. The first question, there are nonprofits throughout Washington County who work directly with communities to help relieve a lot of the initial issues that would help a person in a position to commit a crime. They include food banks, youth services, and mental health. Yet these organizations are not receiving the same consideration, time, advocacy, or concentrated financial budgeting that jail expansion is. Is it just to not include equal amounts of thoughts towards preventive measures for our county? And this was a question that was sent from a constituent to members of the court. And so I'm asking that to see if anyone here has an answer for that constituent or for the community who's watching. Okay. So there's no answer. I'll move to
JP,
number 2.
just a second, though. I I think this is good and cathartic, but I'm really gonna watch getting into a debate about things that aren't necessary to this tonight. So JP, Duncan, please continue. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to comment on one thing that the committee and the court as a whole has voted on to pass that has helped, or is an effort to help towards recidivism and the crowding in the jail, and that's $315,000 of funding towards Returning Home Center. So that was done last year. You can see that earlier in the evening. We went through the expenses from the ARPA funding, and that was one way that we made effort towards trying to help. So if you haven't been out to Returning Home, it's an unbelievable facility. Anyways, just wanted to make that one comment because I think that is a way the courts made effort in that direction.
Thank you, JP Duncan. And I understand that these questions may be irritating. I get that. But I believe that when our constituents take the time out to send emails to us, that we need to ask their questions and allow an opportunity for those to be answered. So this is not meant to be a cathartic exercise. This is my way of making sure that people who want to be involved in the democratic process have an opportunity to do that. Question number 2. There are researchers dedicated to understanding alternative measures to incarceration, such as the National Center for State Courts and the National Institute of Corrections. How has their work been incorporated into the dialogue of the jail expansion? If not, do you think that your decision will be grounded in the wisdom that is easily available to you?
JP Washington, you understand that the Roberts rules, nobody's committed to answering, right? I mean,
Right.
and I don't know that it's fair to bring questions.
JP Duncan, I'm well aware of Robert's rules, like
Right.
well aware.
But how do we,
If there is no answer, there is no answer. I can't force you to answer. I'm asking the questions because the constituent asked that these questions be asked in an open forum.
yeah. Did you answer the questions back to them?
I did. Mhm.
Okay. Are you their, you're their
I
representative?
am not.
Okay. Continue, but I think should not be such pause. I don't think we can keep moving.
Question 3. I understand that undignified language regarding one's race and/or citizenship status has been used openly and not condemned by leadership. When you are imagining who will fill these jails, what image pops into your mind? If a person of color is the first image in your mind, could you address the racism that exists even in your imagination before acting on it in a position that affects all people in Washington County? And I'm assuming that one will not be answered either, but I would just like the person who sent this email to know that your questions were answered in an open forum. Thank you.
Thank you. JP Essery.
Thank you very much. One thing I'd like to make sure that we're all clear on, and that is that there are 2 ordinances, and but there's only one quarter-cent sales tax. Because last night I heard on the news mistakenly that there were 2, one for the jail and one for the juvenile detention center. There's only one. All those are going to be rolled together. I want to make sure we understand that. The other thing is that there's been a lot of work done. People keep saying nothing's been done. A lot's been done looking at the criminal justice side of it and looking at some things to speed people through. And we're working on a number of things now, and hopefully in the next few months, you all be able to see some substance of that. But it takes time to do this. And I'll say it again, we need both. We've got to be doing all we can do to keep people out of jail. And one of the reasons we want a bigger jail is so we can have room to take care of these people's needs. Right now, all we can do is we're doing good to have a place for them to stay because of the overcrowding. And there's not any room to do any of these programs that everybody would like to do. So this is part of that process. Thank you very much.
JP Simons.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of to piggyback off of JP Ussery, and thank you, JP Washington, for bringing those considerations. It's my understanding, and of course, we've had this conversation of this is a very complex issue, problem. It's going to require a very complex solution. This is the first step into addressing part of that strategy, and it's not that we're skipping over any of the other parts of that strategy. It's a matter of timing, is my understanding, that in order to get this on the November ballot, we need to move forward with the process for this tonight. That's my understanding. It's not that we're ignoring other parts of the strategy. Lord knows there's a lot of work that needs to be done on a lot of different fronts, incorporating a lot of different organizations and different departments in the county, but this is part of the process of moving forward on a time frame to get this before the voters on the ballot by November.
Discussion? JP Rio Stafford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have some questions that were, sent to me by constituents. But before I get to those, I wanted to talk about what I did today. I wanted to thank Chief Deputy Cantrell and Major Dinzer for giving me a very extensive tour of the jail facility today. We went through every part of the jail, I believe, and they were very patient as I asked about 1,001 different questions. As I explained to them, I worked as a journalist for 20 years, so that's kind of what I was trained to do, was ask question after question. So, and they answered, every single one. And here's the takeaway. I don't think, nobody disputes that our jail is overcrowded. There's 125 people sleeping on the floor. I saw their mats. It's real. And I don't fault the Sheriff's Department for making this ask, because their responsibility is over what they have control over, which is the number of people that are being sent to their facility. The overcrowding in the jail is not their failure, it's our failure. This is a policy failure of the quorum court, of our legislative branch of county government, of our executive branch of county government. What I heard is that the underlying issue, why most of the people are in the jail, the underlying issue behind a lot of the wrongdoing is, number one, drug addiction, and number two, mental health. And we as a society have failed to address those two major issues. And that is why our jail is overcrowded. They talk about how an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Our CSU still isn't open. If UAMS can't hire people, we have not stepped forward to look at helping them with funding to help raise their salaries to make it more attractive to work there. Right now, people who are in mental crisis, they either have to go to the jail or they have to go to the emergency room. Neither one of those is the correct option, but the right option doesn't exist right now in our county because we haven't created it. This is not their failure, this is our failure. We've had 2 years to fund every item in the criminal justice assessment. Instead, we've basically, I'll go ahead and say it, we farted around for 2 years. We put the CARES Act money into the reserves instead of using it to do things that we were told would help. That study told us that jail was the most expensive option for criminal justice. We are the ones that opted to do nothing. So now, here we are facing the most expensive option as the only option that's left. There's no sobering center in this county. We're asking the jail staff to be our sobering center because there isn't one. It's way more expensive to have our jail process these folks than to have it go through a sobering center. We hem and haw every time the courts need more resources. We did it again tonight. We're violating people's civil rights by making them sit in jail pre-trial for so long. Earlier this year, I can't remember if it was earlier this year or last year, we basically tried to defund the juvenile courts. We added a second juvenile judge, but we put our juvenile judges through hell because we wanted to cut corners instead of fully funding both of those courts. So we're busy trying to pinch pennies on the front end, and now we're asking taxpayers to spend dollars on the back end instead. But I wanted to get to, some of these questions that some constituents sent to me, and the first one, I'd love it if Judge Wood could come answer, because I think this is more of an executive branch question.
You can address your questions to the chair.
Okay. I don't think the chair knows the answer to this question, and we were able, last night I was able to ask questions to Sheriff Helder. So, Mr. Chair, would you allow me to ask questions of Judge Wood?
You can ask him to the chair, and if he wishes to comment on any of them, I'm sure he can step forward and do that.
Okay. So this regards the South Build team, the contractor out of state who has been hired to do the architecture and the engineering for this. So a constituent of ours kind of has done some research. They are telling me that Smith Doyle Contractors, who's the engineer, that the largest project that they've done since they were sold, basically, that the largest project they've done since then was in the $14 to $15 million range. Only one project manager, who's currently employed by Smith Doyle Contractors, has ever built a jail from the ground up before the year 2021, and that person is expected to retire either this year or next year. That leaves the company with 2 project managers who have less than 2 years of experience building jails. Smith Doyle Contractors, they're the ones who built the original Fayetteville jail in 2004, but only one staff member remains from that original project, who's a salesperson. The owners...
I think I could bring some brevity here. I don't have any knowledge of the staffing of South Build. The only knowledge I have is that Sheriff Helder says that they are the preeminent people to do this, and he has full faith in them, and that's what I rely upon.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and continue bringing some facts forward at the public in a public forum at a public setting. The owners, the project managers, and the superintendents who built our original jail are no longer with Smith Doyle Contractors, and it appears their revenue has been shrinking since 2015, when they had $28 million in revenue. They are now no longer listed in the top 30 general contractors in Memphis. Now, the question really that I have for our executive branch...
Rio Stafford, I don't believe it's germane to the issue that's in front of us, and I've already answered. I don't have any intimate knowledge of the staffing of South Build, other than they're a reputable company with the endorsement of Sheriff Elder. Do you have anything germane to this issue? The issue that's, the ordinance that's in front of us for the expansion of the jail?
I'm going to go ahead and get to my question here. We've heard that if this ordinance passes and goes to the voters, there is some concern about the RFQ. Having had all those details as the background, the RFQ was originally submitted for a 230-bed, $25 million expansion. Now we're looking at a 700-bed, $100 million expansion. And according to emails that were revealed during FOIA, the county does not plan to reopen the RFQ, even though the expansion has dramatically expanded. And so it appears that we are going to award this out-of-state contractor without requiring them to resubmit or compete, and that's a concern. And that is relevant to this bond issue.
Well, our job here is to allocate the money or levy the tax or send the tax to the ballot. Our job as a body is not to...
Actually, my job is to bring forward issues that our constituents bring to us.
And I would challenge you to do that. And I think that's going to be great work for the people to decide in November whether or not this is a worthy endeavor. But it's not up to this body to go through the stipulations of RFQs.
I'll just say that any of these contracts, and when it goes to the ballot, and if it passes, then I'll sit down and make sure that we're doing everything legally, and we're doing everything with our partners of the sheriff who's going to be actually working with this. Again, to try to jump ahead and speak to RFQ and is it legal or not legal and all, we've got to pass it. And then we have to sit down and say, okay, is this legal by law, by state statute, by our ordinances, and then go ahead and say, all right, is there an RFQ? Is the sheriff and the team that we're working with is going to be supportive of it before we decide on signing off on any of those particular pieces. So anyway, I just want to make sure I shared that. We're going to do everything legally as we have then, as we've done it 20 years ago, 25 years ago, pre-me, as we have been doing all along. Again, making sure it's legally as well as our fiduciary responsibility on that. All right.
Thank you, Judge Wood.
And
It sounds like right now the county attorney's intention is to not resubmit the RFQ, according to an email that he sent to the contractor.
I don't know that to be true.
Okay, well, I have the email.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other ones?
JP Johnson.
Move the previous question.
I have a motion to move the question. I have a second to that. Second by JP Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? We will take up the question. Public comments. Public comments will be 12 minutes, 3 minutes per person. Just state your name and where you're from, please.
Okay, I'm Margaret Ann Gilmore from Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I had a couple of questions about this jail expansion. I wondered what the cost of the criminal justice assessment study was.
Was it Ms. Gilmore?
Uh-huh.
This is your chance to address us. We can't answer questions, so if you would like to just submit them, we can try to get back with you.
Well, I thought you all
Yeah, but this is the
this.
public comment period, and this
Right.
is your chance to address us, not to ask questions. It
Okay.
won't be a Q&A, but feel free to submit your
Okay,
question.
I just wondered what that cost. And then what programs from this have been implemented? Tell me about the programs from this study that have been implemented.
Was there some confusion? This is your opportunity to address us, and so
Yeah,
we're
okay.
not going to do a Q&A. I mean, so if you want to use your time,
Can you tell
waiting on
me
the
about
response.
the programs? So you don't know? You can't tell me about the programs from the study? Okay. Well, what is your plan for paying for the operation of this facility, the staffing for this facility, and the maintenance for this facility? They don't have one. Well, those are big factors. I mean, I see the number for the building. Now I just wonder how's the staffing and the operation and the maintenance going to be paid for with this? I mean, I see you all making these decisions, and as a citizen, I'm wondering about these things, and I feel like it's fair for me to come and see what your plan is. Tell me about your plan. And you have this blank look on your face.
Hey, that's out of order.
JP Rio Stafford, you're out of order. Will you please return to your seat?
Well,
Ms. Gilmore, I apologize we're not meeting your expectations, but we have to abide by the rules that we've set as a quorum court, and this is a chance for you, once again, to comment to us.
Tell me about is different than a question.
Ms. Gilmore, your time's expired. I appreciate you coming this evening.
Yeah,
Public
well-
comments.
Seems to have some gaps.
Josh Moody, Fayetteville. Ms. Gilmore, $60,000 for the study, or $70,000. I already forgot the second question. I had the answer to that too. Oh, nothing's been implemented, and there is no plan to staff the expansion. About a month ago, I had a conversation with a lady from Little Rock. She's a lobbyist down there. We were meeting on an unrelated matter, but as things happened, we started talking about what's going on here in Washington County. She's a self-described uber conservative, and we were talking about, you know, justice reform and this and that, and the jail expansion talks and everything. And the more we talked, the more we realized we agreed on everything. And eventually, she looked at me and she said, "Josh, why are you running as a Democrat?" Which, coming from her, I took as a huge compliment. She also told me that, oh, by the way, she said she probably knows some of you as well. She's been down there for a long time. She also said that 20 years ago, she used to look at the guy on the street corner and just, you know, yell at him and say, "Get a job." And now she looks at now she sees that guy and just says, "How have we failed him?" Which is a great question we should all ask. And Chairman Deakins, you have failed the taxpayers of Washington County. You, as the finance chair, have been sitting on solutions for 2 years, and you have not granted any support outside of, we have formed the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which is great. That's a good first step. We have funded a full-time coordinator for that committee. But essentially all we really have done is open another committee, talk about expanding government, right? And what we have not done is provided them with any support to actually implement any of the things that they've discussed over the last year and a half, or to implement any things that the study provided to us 2 years ago. So rather than using some money to support them, the only support that I'm aware of, in addition to what I'm already talking about, is the returning home that we heard about earlier, which is true. They did get funded, and the president partially funded your campaign around the same time, which I'm sure was very appreciated. I've come to the realization that I'm not just the Democratic nominee for Washington County Judge. I've come to the realization that I'm also the Libertarian candidate, the Green Party candidate, the Independent candidate. In fact, as far as many conversations I've had with many people who tend to vote Republican, conversations I've had with them over the recent months, I'm honored to be their candidate as well. This is not about R's and D's. This is about common sense. This is about limited government. This is about actually, you talk about back the blue. Let's back the blue. Let's reduce crime for the law enforcement to have to deal with. Doesn't that make sense? Isn't that being proactive and efficient and limited government?
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Your time's expired.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Public comments.
Hello. My name is Beth Koger. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So here we are again talking about the jail expansion. When this came up in 2018, 2019, some of you here were on the court at that time. Can you hear me okay over there, Judge J.P. John? It wasn't a good idea then, you decided, and so I don't know what changed with your thinking, but I just want to share that some of the things that have been talked about tonight that we're doing. We did fund the returning home, but it's a very small program. There's no way it's going to make a dent in our jail population. I want to mention some things that we could do that would make an immediate dent in our population, help reduce. We could fund pretrial services. For around $550,000 a year, we could have a really good pretrial services program to address a lot of people who are in the jail now who can't make bail. Sebastian County funded their mental health court for 2 years for $526,000. But until we address the root causes of why we have so many people in our jail, we're never going to build a jail big enough to hold everybody. Some of those reasons are poverty, drug addiction, housing, lack of mental health services, and we house people from other jurisdictions. We're still doing that. But I want to tell you what we could do today to get those people off the floor, 125 people that are on the floor. Today we have 202 people in our Washington County Jail that are there on bonds ranging from $1,000 to 17,500. A few of those have probation violations, so they couldn't be out anyway. But those are mostly low-level offenders who are in jail because they can't make bail. If we had a pretrial services program that could assess those people and get them out of jail and connect them to the resources, that would open up beds right there. But I'm asking you to look back on the study that you paid for and think about the recommendations that they say that we should do. I'm asking you to pause. There's really no rush on this. Why are we pushing it forward right now before we do the alternatives that we know that we're supposed to do? Also, I remind you, as I did last night, and as I have many times before, the National Center for State Courts said we would only need to expand the jail if we do nothing. And nothing is pretty much what we're doing. Thank you.
Public comments.
Good evening. My name is Derek Van Vost. I live in Springdale, Arkansas. I travel a lot, but not to say who's right or wrong about the jail or anything, not to say that there is a wrong, but just want to share a little story with you. I'm the special assistant to Reverend Jesse L. Jackson, Sr. My house was hit by a tornado a few months back, so I came home. Reverend Jackson wanted to come with me. So we came in, ate at Herman's and all these things, and went to Little Rock and had a good time. He told me he thought the world of Arkansas. He said this is a place, it's a lot of low-hanging fruit. But once we'd gotten to Memphis, I asked him, I said, what's your takeaway from Arkansas? And what he said to me will never, ever leave my mind, because this is my home. This is where I was born, and I'm sure this is where I'll be buried. But with all honesty, he says, from what I can see, Arkansas is becoming a place with first-class jails and second-class schools. Well, as I flew in a couple days ago, I seen on the news that Arkansas is ranked 58th in education, and 48th in education, excuse me. And so with that being said, as we expand these jails, I think what Ms. Kroger said and some more people were saying, I think we have to look further into ways to help people. We should, I think, invest back into those people. I think because once you fall into that jail trap, it's a trap. You can't get out. I mean, if you can't buy food, you can't buy bail, and get bail, you're in jail for a couple weeks. Everybody knows the process, and you fall back. When you get out, you have to revert back to doing crimes and things. I just think before we jump so fast into something like that, is that we should definitely think about investing in ways to helping people to not be in that situation in the first place. I think that's a big amount of money that we could, share back to our communities or whatever. And I appreciate everything you guys are doing. I know this isn't an easy, cut and dry answer, but or a fix. But I do believe that it is kind of a rush situation, and we seem to be rushing a lot of money into a jail when we're really not, I guess, seeing the people as people who are in the jails. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Van Vost. With that, public comment is expired. We'll take up the question. We have a motion to pass item 20.1 to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation by J.P. Johnson, a second by J.P. Essery. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Item 20.1 will move to the full quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Before we move into the last item of the agenda, I would like to make a motion that we put items 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 18 on a consent agenda for next week's quorum court meetings. One more time, those are items 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 18. My notes show all those have passed unanimously. Do I have a second? I have a motion by chairman to put items on the consent agenda and a second by J.P. Duncan. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Those items 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 18 will move to the consent agenda. The final item on the agenda is a 12-minute public comment period with a 3-minute limit for each individual. If those would like to come forward, please state your name and where you're from. Any public comments?
Josh, Moody, Fayetteville. I may have missed something, but I thought that the law clerk was unanimous too, so maybe not. Just to wrap up quickly, very quickly, what I was saying earlier. Obviously, my hope is to win in November, and my hope for this jail expansion is to be shut down in November, at which point this body, whoever is sitting in this body, in January will be mandated to come up with critical thinking solutions, not a gazillion-dollar Band-Aid, because that's what this is, that will cost Washington County taxpayers into perpetuity, and it will also cost us in quality of life. Let's improve quality of life. Let's save money. It's not just a humanitarian issue, it's a fiscal responsibility issue. And it's amazing to me that this supermajority quorum court is not considering fiscal responsibility. I thought that was part of what you're all about, limited government fiscal responsibility, or at least it used to be. Thank you.
Public comments.
Hello, I'm Beth Coker. I live in Fayetteville, Arkansas. I would like to mention that Treasurer Hill mentioned that we got the second half of our American Rescue Plan Act dollars, 23+ million. And I noticed that we have a county services meeting on the calendar for later this month. I would respectfully ask that when the county services meet, that we have a application process ready, or we can talk about an application process for non-governmental organizations, nonprofits, to apply for some ARPA funds, because so far none of that has gone to the community and we're in desperate need. I work at the St. James Food Pantry on Tuesdays. I did not work today because my grandson is visiting, but we have so much need there that we see. Cars are lined up all the way from the church, all the way down up a hill to almost to Dixon Street every Tuesday when we're there. So please, if we could have something lined up for that, it would be great. Thank you.
Public comments. Seeing no further comments, this meeting's adjourned.